if people, number one, have, stable money and stable investments, that creates, human flourishing, because they know that, they don't have to go out and spend money. They know that they have an asset to borrow against. They know that they have something.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Chronicles. I'm your host, Jonny and the founder of Cattani Capital Group. For the last 2 years, I've been studying alternative assets and now help solve the problem of creating passive cash flow for creators, influencers, and busy professionals by bringing you 5 episodes a week of easy to understand education in the world of passive investing. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Cash Flow Chronicles. I'm your host, Jonny Cattani, and I am joined today by Michael Flight. Michael was named the Godfather of blockchain real estate by Forbes crypto editor. Michael achieved this distinction by co-founding Liberty Real Estate Fund, the world's first net lease security token fund, creating the Blockchain Real Estate Summit. More recently, co-founding Invest on Main, the real estate and alternative asset marketplace of the future, and Accelerated Law, a faster, cheaper way to create and tokenize security offerings. Michael's a real estate entrepreneur and real estate tokenization pioneer who's an expert in retail real estate investment, redevelopment, and real estate on the blockchain. Michael, welcome to the show.
Jonny Cattani, thanks for inviting me. Number one, I love the name, and since I married an Italian, I love Italians, and my kids are also half Italian. But I think we were introduced by Adam Carswell, right?
We were indeed. Adam was a recent guest on the show, good friend, obviously. And Michael and I are friends in real life. I do like to make that distinction on this show because I interview so many people that I'm like, hey, we actually know each other in real life. So yes, we were introduced by Adam, which quite frankly, I think that Adam could probably have introduced me to almost every single one of my guests. I'm pretty sure that man knows everyone.
He gets around. And when I first met him, I think it was in 2017 or 2018. He was just starting out. So the only one he knew was Hunter, and then he met me. So
that's awesome. Yeah, he has great things to say. I think you and I have connected a few times through Adam. I always tease. I was like, I don't need to know everyone. I just need to know Adam.
That's perfect. So we should just name this the Adam Carswell Show.
That's right.
And Blockchain Show. So
I love it. That's awesome. All right. Well, awesome conversation ahead today because this is new to the industry, newish to the industry, I should say, in terms of it being in the conversation. And obviously there's a lot of nuance to all of this. So let's first kind of go back a little bit. How did you first get introduced to real estate? And then, where did this whole idea kind of come from for the blockchain?
I've been in real estate since 1986. I was probably involved earlier. I've been a real estate broker since 1986. My brother and I, for whatever reason, I was in college. I think he just got out of college. And we went to a Nothing Down seminar, and we decided that we wanted to get into real estate and even at the time, it was known that most millionaires were in real estate. So it's like, oh, this seems like a cool thing. We soon found out we couldn't buy property, Nothing Down, but ended up, did buying our first investment probably around 1987 or so. But I started full-time as a retail real estate broker in 1986. And then went to work for a large syndicator probably around 1998. The savings and loan crisis, and all kinds of other stuff, economic stuff, happened early 1990. So a friend of mine who ended up becoming my partner, and then one other guy, we were all laid off, and we just said, well, as long as we're laid off, we just might as well start a company. So we went into shopping center management and investment, and along the way partnered with some great institutional owners from publicly traded real estate investment funds out of The Hague in Holland, and real estate investment trust and insurance companies, and really got exposed to doing a lot of different things. Our company was one of the first to do what's called demalling. So there's now all these old dead malls out there, but in the late 1990s into the early 2000s, we redeveloped 3 malls. And so we were on the forefront of that. Right around 2017, we could see that retail was going to get impacted by the internet. And also what was really weird was when we started our company in 1990, I had a friend from high school who also started his company at the same time. He was in software. He was the smarter guy, actually knew how to do math. And so their company just took off. But we were, actually sharing office space with this growing company that was at the forefront of building out the internet, because those guys did what's called Unix programming, and the internet runs on what's called a TCP/IP, protocol. So I was always around people that were doing technology stuff. So that's kind of how the technology stuff converged. And then you're going to like this. I also, since the late 1990s through the 2000s, was hanging around a lot of people that were more free-minded, free markets, and also some crazy libertarians. And so I got introduced to Bitcoin really early. As a matter of fact, this guy, Jeff Tucker, was talking about Bitcoin to me, and I didn't understand it all in like 2014. And I just really should have listened to him when he was talking about Bitcoin, because I just thought it was like funny internet money, but I didn't understand all the concepts behind, getting money away from a central bank and getting away from inflationary pressures. And I also, like I said, didn't understand, because it's like, well, it's a software program. So I kept saying to him, it's like, why wouldn't you just tie it to real assets? Like, why wouldn't you tie it to real estate? Because then you get a real asset. Or why wouldn't you tie it to gold? And then it actually Adam and I, Adam introduced me to these guys that out of Romania, also in like 2017, 2018, that did what's called an ICO. And they basically had like Airbnbs in Bucharest, Romania. And they did an initial coin offering, which is a cryptocurrency, and raised, I think it's either 800,000 or $1.2 million. And I'm like, if these guys that don't know anything about real estate, and we're just like crazy, like they're like, doing YouTube videos of them in strip clubs in Romania, saying, buy Bitcoin. And I'm like, if these guys can raise this money, this is like a great, alternative to capital raising. It's like crowdfunding on steroids. So started looking into that, and realized that I have Nexus in the United States, and it really looked and felt like a security. So we went about trying to figure out how to issue tokens on a blockchain the legal way, because we knew that number one, it would create all kinds of investor options for investors to get in and out of real estate. And we'll get into this a little later. I'm just giving you the background. And then we also knew that it could open up worldwide investment in safe quality real estate in the United States, because there's a ton of people out there. And going back to the monetary policy, there's people in countries that their money is losing value like 50%, 100% in a year. So if they can just park their money into a stable asset, even with no return, but you could give them a return. And if they could, just keep, pace, and they could get a stable asset, plus they've got the flexibility. So what I was looking at, it's like, why not create something similar to like a real estate money market fund? So you get the stability, but you get the flexibility to get in and out of it, hopefully with a little more liquidity than you do with a real estate asset. So with that said, I will stop talking and you can start asking questions again.
Wow, that is quite the story. You've done a lot for sure, and sounds like you've been on the forefront of a lot of things. So makes perfect sense why you're kind of leading the charge for the blockchain real estate. So obviously, there's a million questions running through my mind. Let's kind of start high level, right? So the first one is, these are securities, right? When you're talking about, especially the private placement world, it's overseen by the SEC, and there's all these rules we have to follow and all of that. So, what are some of those? What applies? What doesn't apply? Does it kind of deregulate because it's all of a sudden on a blockchain, or, How does
That
that
is
area
an
kind of
excellent
work?
question. So the long and short answer is that it is exactly, so we're talking about real estate investments. So it's exactly like a normal real estate syndication. So it has to follow all the laws of the United States or all the laws of any country that you might be issuing it in, or any country that investors might be investing from. So in the United States, there typically would be a Reg D filing, but you could also do it as a Regulation A filing. And certain people, and we are one of them, that's experimenting with a regulation crowdfunding filing, so that you're just issuing the shares, but instead of issuing the shares like a normal syndication where they're on paper, you do the DocuSign and then you print it out, you put it in your file cabinet. These shares are actually listed and issued to a blockchain so that you can see where the share is. And so that at some point later on, if you decide, like, let's, for example, you do multifamily, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and what's your like minimum? So let's say I want to invest $100,000 into your tokenized multifamily offering. And then a little bit later on, I say, well, I've got 2 kids. What I want to do is give one child, $30,000 of that 100,000, another child 30,000, and then keep 40,000 for myself. I suddenly can do estate planning a lot easier than I could if I was in your paper syndication right now, because in your paper syndication, I would have to go to the sponsor and say, I want to do this, this, and that. And then the other thing is that, so it's exactly the same thing as the paper syndication. It's just in a digital format, which allows it to be traded.
Interesting. Okay. So now you're getting kind of liquidity and a little bit more, I guess, control
I
over your
yeah,
shares, right? Obviously, you're not getting control of the investment. That still applies. It's still the operator, all of that.
but you as the limited partner investor get more control over your own money. And
Right.
it's so you get control over some of the decisions that you want to do. I don't necessarily sell it as liquidity because I don't know how much liquidity is going to be out there.
Mm,
But what I do sell it is that the investor gets flexibility.
okay.
So then the other legal thing that's different with the shares issued to a blockchain versus the paper shares is after a 1-year lockup period, these shares can trade to accredited or non-accredited investors. So if you're in a
Mm,
Reg D filing, these shares it also opens up access to people that couldn't normally get into these deals, and they get a 1-year track record. They could see, oh, this thing that Jonny's operating over here, I really like that. I want to invest in that. And if those shares come available, I can invest in that and not have to be an accredited investor. So I think it's a really cool situation there. And then the other flexibility it gives investors is it has the potential that you could actually borrow against your shares instead of selling them.
wow.
You, with what we call the DeFi world, could actually put those shares and then borrow against them, similar to the way you can borrow on margin, with a stock.
Fascinating. Wow. Okay, that's wild. Okay, so from the operating standpoint now, does anything change? Like, or is it, if things are happening between with the tokens and the, let's say they are trading or being broken up, nothing changes from your end, right? You still got your funding the same way.
Right,
It's
right,
just this is just all on the limited partner side.
right. And since, let's back up. Since a blockchain is just like a giant ledger or a giant, spreadsheet that keeps track of things, this should actually help streamline your administrative cost as a sponsor. So because you'll know, who gets what, it's automatically prorated, it's automatically in it. So then, once you hit the distribution button, so let's say you can distribute, like I've seen some of the tokens distribute daily, which is crazy. But instead of doing it quarterly, you can say to your investors, I'm going to distribute monthly. and you just do all your accounting, you press the button, boom, the distributions go out to the investors. And the other really cool thing for the investor is the investor doesn't have to be in the United States. The investor the investor can either keep their shares and get paid as an ACH payment, or they can also get paid in like a USD stablecoin or something. So the investor can either be, in Salt Lake City, or they can be in, where I'm at in Chicago and have a robust banking system, or they could be, I'm not saying anything, so I don't know what the banking system in Costa Rica is, but I can decide to retire in Costa Rica and I can still get all my distributions just in, a wallet, so that wallet follows me wherever I am in the world.
Wow.
And then I just take the money out in an ATM wherever I'm at in the world.
Fascinating. Okay. So we do need to back up a little bit. I guess we kind of skip. Explain real quick, just high level, what the blockchain is, just so people can kind of, if they don't know.
Sure. So the internet is a worldwide communications protocol. So that's what the internet is. That's what allows us to do this video and all the rest of it. And so we know that that's a communications protocol. Blockchain is a worldwide value transfer protocol. So you can either transfer money, you can transfer assets, or you can transfer, commodities or other things. So blockchain is basically a way to keep track of value and a way to transfer value. So just like the internet was for communications, this is for money and finance and assets. And not only are people using blockchain just to trade cryptocurrency, but they're also using blockchain to keep track of like produce. So like Walmart has this thing where they want to make sure that, if there's a salmonella outbreak in avocados or something, that the avocado from picking and planting all the way to which store it went to is all tracked on a blockchain. So that's something that blockchains can do really well. They're just ledger systems that keep track of things. What the really unique property with a blockchain is, especially in terms of finance, is that you cannot what's called double spend the money. So if I send you one Bitcoin, that Bitcoin can prove that it's the original Bitcoin. It's not like what Napster was, where you take and you hit duplicate and then send out, thousands of songs. So the great thing about a blockchain is it keeps track of each unique individual, whatever it's tracking. It's a digital representation of those shares. And so nobody else can have those shares. And the great thing about security tokens, which is what we're talking about, which are shares in a syndication, is if your shares get lost or stolen, or you forget what your number is, unlike cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, since they're fully regulated, those shares, as long as you can prove you can get your shares reissued and get back into the game, and you don't lose anything.
And it will devalue the stolen ones. Like
it'll do what's called burning the stolen ones. So it's basically the same thing as putting the stolen ones in a shredder.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for that explanation. Okay. So what are you up against? What's in the way? Is this already taking off? Have you kind of cleared everything? Do you have deals on it yet? What are you kind of up against right now?
There are tokenizations, and there are stuff out there. One of the issues with mass adoption is right now it's just too hard to figure out how to do it if you're an investor. And the other issue is that there's extra cost associated. So if I went to certain well-known tokenization platforms out there right now to tokenize my shopping center offering, I would have to pay anywhere from $8,000 to, I've been quoted, up to $60,000 to tokenize, the shares, which is crazy. That adds no value. So what we are putting together is, number one, a alternative asset marketplace that lists real estate sponsors and real estate deals. Not only that, but also everything that sponsors are raising for now, including oil and gas, including if you've got car wash funds, including if you've got ATM funds. So what we're doing is creating critical mass so that there's all these deals on this platform. It's basically, like going to a shopping mall or going to the Amazon of investing, and you can choose the sponsor, you can choose your deals. And then later on this year, once we're fully licensed, it will be opened up to trading so that when those shares are eligible for trading, non-accredited investors and accredited investors can come on and buy shares and deals that have already been up and operating.
Wow.
But the other thing that we realized is to get sponsors moving. It's like, why, if I'm a sponsor and I'm successful, what's the value add for tokenization?
Right.
And, the value add that we figured out is creating what we call accelerated law, which is offering documents, because let's face it, most offering documents are really not unique. If you're doing one value add apartment building and then you roll into another value add apartment building, your offering documents are pretty much the same. It's just the address changes and the LLC changes. And, but all the rest of that should be pretty much the same. So as long as we are figuring out how to map what goes into a token, and into a security token and all the individual parameters. And we said, because most people out there that are doing tokenizations are doing every deal as a one-off tokenization. And we said, well, this doesn't make sense. Why not make everyone, like a prototype so that that all the code is good and that everything is working right. But also it's like, if almost 70% of the deals out there are all basically the same, and it's just these things are changing, why do I need to go to a securities attorney and pay $15,000 to $20,000 for that? So, but if there is a unique thing, then by all means, I suggest you go to a securities attorney. So we have partnered with securities attorneys to bring the cost down and make it much faster to get your deal done and get your offering documents done. And included in that is the legal wording to issue tokens and the tokenization itself. So we've not only reduced the cost of legal fees, but we've also included all the legal necessities that you would need to issue a standard Regulation D offering.
Hence the name accelerated law. Accelerates everything. Yeah, very, very efficient process.
Right.
And so as these move through, right, you do the deal. Does the value, is it automatically calculated? Like, the time value decreases, if you buy 2 years, buy a token 2 years into it, there's not much cash flow, and now there's equity. Like, how are those the value calculations done in terms of what it's actually worth now?
The value calculation would be done, basically the net asset value of that property in time. And then, somebody would also be, making the assumption, I'm going to get X amount of cash flow. So if this deal is going to be a deal, like, let's say you typically do a 5-year deal. And I'm buying into it in year 2. I'm going to evaluate it based on how much cash flow I'm getting, just like you would do any normal investment.
Yeah. It's like a bond,
what kind of
basically.
tax benefits I'm still getting. And also, you would calculate your internal rate of return based on, a 3-year hold versus a 5-year hold. And so that would give you a pretty good idea of the net asset value. And then the asset value is also at the time, you can kind of figure that out by, what the cap rates are and what, cap rates are for, things, like apartments in, let's say, Salt Lake City. So you could just base it on that, because theoretically, if that property, you had it for a 5-year hold and somebody offered you, X amount of dollars and you sold it in year 2 or year 3, that's what the value is. Hence the net asset value.
Right, right. Fascinating. Okay, interesting.
But
Wow.
there's a lot of the stuff that's untested. I mean,
Right.
so we're, since there hasn't been a real liquid market for, private investments, whether they're real estate assets, whether they're hedge funds, or whether, and all these things can be tokenized. There's even tokenized whiskey funds where you buy into, whiskey that's being stored, and, you can get an IRR from, how long and how many of the, whiskey barrels they sell off per year and everything else. So any of that stuff, it's just basically financial engineering, but it's making it much more approachable. I mean, how many people can get into a whiskey deal, just offhand, but all of a sudden it's like, if it's tokenized, it's like, oh, I suddenly, I found this whiskey deal on the internet and I can get into it. It was something that you could only find if you happen to like hang out in certain masterminds, or somebody mentioned it to you at your country club.
Fascinating. Okay. So there are, and these do exist. Like you can already do this with like the whiskey and whatnot. So there
There
is some.
there is Scotch whiskey funds. There's definitely bourbon whiskey funds, and I think the Japanese have started doing like the Japanese whiskey funds. So
Okay.
you can mix and match your whiskeys.
And these are something that will also eventually trade on your.
If they're compatible and they're regulated, and it's something that, because on our platform we're regulated by not only the SEC but also FINRA. So if it's approved to do that, and they have and so there are bourbon whiskey funds in the United States that are doing everything in a regulated manner. So somebody would be able to list those shares, on our platform, because, they were issued, because there's also certain things that, and we as syndicators should be doing this anyways, but, you're supposed to be doing what's called KYC, which is know your customer.
Mhm.
And you're supposed to also be doing anti-money laundering checks. And so there's certain, different countries that you cannot invest from. So these tokens have to be, whitelisted so that you can get in. If you're from the United States, you're whitelisted. If you're an accredited investor, initially you're whitelisted. If you're not an accredited investor, and you can also do Reg S tokens so that they're not offered to any US citizens. But again, if it has nexus in the United States, there has to be limits on, there's certain countries that the United States considers bad and cannot invest in.
Fascinating. Okay. So a lot of nuances.
Right.
But I can see where, from a capital raising standpoint, this could definitely increase your capacity, because you're sort of overcoming some of the big outliers that hold people back from investing in sort of these long-term deals, right? Access to the principal and all of the things that kind of go along with it. You mentioned earlier being able to even split it up and give some to different people, kind of legacy wealth almost.
Right.
um so
Right.
you
And also
have, yeah,
making it easier. I mean,
right,
so,
that's what I mean.
it's easier to like, okay, I found, Jonny, I like what he's doing. And the difference between this and the stock market is that I can have an actual relationship with you.
Right.
I can call you up. I can have it, if I've got a McDonald's, in Texas, or I got a McDonald's in Chicago, and I'm an investor, I can actually go visit that, versus, it's really hard to go. You can visit the Anheuser-Busch factory, but you don't have a relationship with, the chief executive, and you don't have a relationship with Augie Bush.
Right.
So,
I talk about this all the time because I worked in the stock market, was a licensed broker, and I talk about how people invest in mutual funds, they're not going to call that fund manager, and you probably couldn't even get him on the line. Sure, it says his name on the disclosure docs and whatnot, but to actually get a hold of him and get a meeting, whereas, you know, you could call up a lead sponsor and be like, hey, I want to come visit your office, and they'd welcome you with open arms, you know, if you were, you know, the right investor. So that gives you even more control, right? And you're just
Yeah, and then the other really cool thing is that with the blockchain, you can do other unique things. So, for example, the most well-known security token offering is the Aspen coin, and that's trading on a ATS, which is kind of like a mini exchange. It's trading on an ATS in the United States, but you can be an investor in Aspen coin. But one of the perks is that you can all in Aspen is, you know, the St. Regis Aspen in Aspen, Colorado. Is if you invested earlier on, you got like free nights at the Aspen in Colorado. And so if you've got, you know, a thing that lends itself to it. So for example, you could actually have a resident program in your apartment buildings to say, hey, I know you're a renter, but this is a way that you can build equity, and you can either at some point buy a house, or if you never want to buy a house, we've got a resident investor equity program here. So you could buy these type of shares. You could also do special promotions with investors and push that out, which is it makes it easier so that you can get, you know, like for example, if I was Grant Cardone, I would have investors investing in my projects, and if they invested in a certain amount of projects, then maybe I give them NFT tickets that they can go to some of my special events and things like that, or they get an NFT to go and, you know, go to a dinner with me, an investor dinner with me and stuff like that. And then, you know, as soon as Jonny Cattani gets that, you know, well known, you know, he's going to be doing that stuff too. So he's going to be like, oh, we're having our investor dinner in London, so you guys come out and meet me here.
That's very cool. Very cool. Okay. So kind of all the same perks as like what you have now, like some of the stuff that's already happening now, right? Like you have the Board Ape Yacht Club and
Yeah, and
that
I don't even
and
know
some
what's
other stuff.
gonna. I try not to even go to there because I really dislike NFTs, and it's a
Yeah.
whole subculture. But
Right.
those NFTs can actually be used for something like you know, miles, you know, airline miles, or you could use them for hotel miles, or you could use them for, you know, if you're a good renter, you know, we reward you with something. So there's a ton of different things that I mean, I shouldn't say nobody, but there's like people a lot smarter than me that are already figuring out all these different ways that you not only build community, you build a community of investors, you build a community of residents, and you know, it's a different way to raise capital.
Totally. Totally. So what are some of are like we talked about it getting stolen, how you can get it back and it burns the other. Are there any risks associated, additional risks aside from what risks are already, you know, inherently there from investing in syndications and whatnot?
You know, it's basically it's just a different wrapper, and it's really all the same thing. So you're either and I equate it to you're probably not old enough, but when I was growing up, you know, all we had was albums, you know, and record players. And so, and then it went to the CD, which is digital, and then it went fully online, which is fully digital. And so basically this is paper, you know, what we're doing now with the syndications, and it's going to full digital. And so with the digital, it gives you a lot more flexibility. Just like I can't, you know, carry a record player around, and the records that I had filled up you know, a few bookshelves and stuff, and you had to leaf through them. Now I can sit around with my kids and play hurdle, and they beat me most of the time because I don't know the modern songs, but I kill them on, you know, 70s, 80s, and 90s. But we could sit around and play hurdle, and that's coming out of somebody's phone.
Right.
And it's like gazillions of songs, and it's the same thing. It's like this just gives you much more flexibility and gives you greater access to, your investments.
Incredible. I love it. How far out do you think we are from this kind of being mass adopted and really taking off?
I'm not sure. I hope we're building and other people are building the marketplaces that, people are going to say, oh, I like this. I feel comfortable with this. And it's a place that I can go and find things. And so our marketplace is not only doing alternative assets, but we're also, catering to people that are doing 1031s and having DST listings, which are Delaware statutory trusts. So that's the type of thing that there's going to be over the next 30 years, there's going to be the greatest transfer of wealth between baby boomers to the millennial generation.
Yeah.
And so those baby boomers are either going to be selling their apartment buildings and want to be trading into something that's, a lot less. Like I specialize in triple net properties, and I just call those mailbox money, because the tenant pays for the real estate taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance. And so there's going to be all these older apartment owners. And I was at a birthday party for a friend of mine, and he's like, yeah, I'm at that age. I'm like, well, let's start, trading into, because he's got, probably 10 apartment buildings that have just grown and grown and grown. And it's basically his retirement. And so it's like trade into something that, you don't have to worry about, whether the property manager, what's going on and everything. So that's going to happen. And then there's going to be a lot of these millennials that don't want to, own those apartment buildings. So they're going to want to trade into something that's like flexible and just gives them the cash flow, or gives them, if they want to buy a house or something, they can actually liquidate.
Totally. Wow. Incredible. My mind is blown, honestly, because I'm just like foreseeing it and I know it's coming. And it's just like it makes so much sense, when you think about it. And it just is crazy to think this like private placement, not many people really even know about it yet, kind of relatively speaking, compared to how many people know about the stock market.
Right.
Meanwhile, in 30 years, it'll be, oh yeah, you just go to Invest on Main and boom, 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 you can trade it right here.
But there are a lot of millennials and then Gen Zs that don't really even want to get into the stock market. I mean,
Right.
you can see the Robin Hood phenomena, and they look at it like it's the same thing. It's like just playing a game, and it's a casino and stuff like that. And so I've talked with a
They're not
bunch
far
of,
off.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I just missed out on the Pepe meme coin that in the last week went up 3 million%. So that's what is going to be the expectation. So they're going to want to, but at the end of the day, once they realize, it's like, well, there's no asset, it's only marketing behind the Pepe meme coin, and there's no asset behind Budweiser. So Budweiser can do something, that offends people in their advertising, and they can lose $6 billion of market share. But there's like a solid asset behind an oil well. There's a solid asset behind a gold mine, or a silver mine, or, if you really want to, talk about renewals, you need to actually do mining of rare earth materials. Those are solid assets. They create cash flow. And not only that, but the stock market doesn't give you any tax benefits. These are all K1s, so you're getting tax sheltered or tax preferred returns. So like I always like to say, if you're buying a bond of McDonald's, you're going to get probably a 3% return or so. It's going to be steady. It's going to be great. But if you're actually buying the real estate of McDonald's, you're getting a higher return for the McDonald's. Let's say it's even a 5 cap. Okay, so you're getting a 5%, cash on cash return, but you're getting a lot of that, sheltered with the tax benefits. Now, I'm not an attorney and I am not an accountant, and this is not investment advice, but I'm telling you, if you're looking, comparing the same thing, you get the same credit, and actually you get better credit with the real estate, because they have to keep paying the rent where they can stop paying the bondholders.
Yep.
So, and the stockholders are like in third position. So the real estate is actually in first position.
Yeah, that's a thing that people don't realize with the stock market. And you obviously can buy your blue chips and whatnot, and there's something there, but not tangible. And so do you foresee a lot of pushback from Wall Street, and as this thing starts to take off, or are there institutions on Wall Street who are backing this and want to get involved?
The guy from BlackRock said that everything is going to be tokenized within the next few years. Wall Street sees this because there's trading fees to be made. So,
Naturally.
Wall Street sees this as, you can finally open up. And then the guys that, we're working with, to run our marketplace, that are the regulated, licensed for a digital asset, ATS exchange, they're really excited to work with us because they can take and, together they can create like ETFs, like they can like buy a piece of, Jonny Catani's stuff, and they can buy a piece of, a shopping center that I own, and they can buy, and they can make, a diversified ETF, in private real estate, or, they can balance off. I've got a high cash flow deal, and I can, balance that off in, something. So for example, one of the things that we talked about is like, there's all kinds of tax benefits and write-offs with, quote unquote, green energy, like wind turbines and solar. Well, what if you like mix that with a cash flowing oil wells, and you've got that as your energy sector ETF? You can't get that right now, on a publicly traded stock market.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, I was just talking about an oil and gas on earlier episode. So, and it presents incredible opportunities. I mean, active
Right now, better
income.
than real estate.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Well, number one,
You see those numbers and you're like, wait a second, what? You're gonna do what with my money? You're gonna 3.5x it?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
This guy said he's only gonna 1.5x my money on this real estate deal.
Right. No, and it's the investment fundamentals. I mean, I
Right.
love real estate. I think there's investment fundamentals for, a lot of real estate. I think, downtown office and certain markets are going to be in for a world of pain.
Yes.
It remains to be seen every time they've written off real estate. Like when we started our company in 1990, it was stay alive till 95. They've written off, shopping centers as they're going to all go away. It's like, no, they're not going to go all away. It's just going to be different channels of distribution. And I think it's going to be the same thing with office buildings. I mean, you're certainly going to see a shakeout in office buildings, but real estate is always going to be there. But circling back to oil and gas, the fundamentals for oil and gas is like they have not built out. And so we are in for a rough ride, and we need the oil and gas. Most people don't understand. It's like the gas is like the feedstock for fertilizer.
Yeah.
But, you can't have the amount of plastics that are around us. You can't have, like, I've had this conversation with kids that are, friends of my, sons. And at one point, like somebody said, well, we just need to get rid of all fossil fuels. And so I'm like, can I see your phone? And so she hands me her phone. I'm like, you don't need this. And she's like, what? Give me my phone back. I'm like, no, this is like completely fossil fuels and horrible cobalt and lithium mining.
Right.
I said, this is like one of the dirtiest things ever that you've got. And what you're doing is just dismissing this. I said, so
right. Like, hey, Mr. Tesla driver, did you know it takes 800 barrels of oil just for one of your batteries? And you have what, 3 or 4 in your Tesla? So
right.
do that.
Right.
Math.
And it's powered by, because I live close to the Burlington Northern, main trunk line. And I am constantly held up by coal trains that are going by. It's powered by coal. So at the end of the day, what's the right fuel mix? I don't know. But we right now cannot decarbonize, quote unquote. We need oil, we need gas, and we need a bunch of people that are innovative and creative, figuring out how to put together nuclear energy and everything else. So that, because our entire world, is basically a unit of money is basically a unit of energy.
Yeah. It's interesting to watch kind of this energy race or conversation. I mean, it depends which side you're on, but certainly you would be silly to dismiss oil and gas. And I understand that eventually we do need some alternative energy, something more renewable. I think nuclear is onto something. I think is it fusion or fission? The one where it gets smaller, like it's tiny.
Yeah, that's a long way off. We've
Yeah.
figured out how to do nuclear energy, but the side that I am on, and this is circling back to Bitcoin, I was at a conference, and the conference is put on by a free market think tank that figures out how to alleviate poverty and create human flourishing. And so the side that I'm on is human flourishing. And
Yes.
so if people can make lots of money in investments and keep their wealth and have generational wealth to like pass it on to other people, I'm into human flourishing. I'm into human flourishing no matter where you at. I think everybody should get a shot at human flourishing. And to just say, we're going to stop everything is going to leave a lot of people in other countries stuck in abject poverty, and it's going to suck us down into poverty. So my first standard is, if you're human, I'm on your side.
I love that. Wow. I like that a lot. That's awesome. Well, Michael, as always, incredible to talk to you. I appreciate your insight. This has been absolutely amazing. So much value. I'm mind blown still, but might be the cold medicine. But let's jump to the final five here. First question, best advice you've gotten from a mentor?
The best advice I've gotten from a mentor is to always, number one, know where truth is, and that there's abject truth. And since I'm a Christian and my mentor was a Christian, he's like, this is truth that you can rely upon, and you can build your worldview off of it. And that's really probably been the best advice I've gotten, is to say, not like Pontius Pilate, what is truth, but is there a knowable truth that I can build my worldview on and my life on?
Wow. I love that. That's incredible. What is it about your career that makes you feel like you're fulfilling your why?
I really enjoy helping people, and I really enjoy having everybody succeed. And so my why is, how can I help a lot of people, or how can I help just people coming into my own little network intimately, but how can I just make the world a better place? And I do believe that if people, number one, have stable money and stable investments, that creates human flourishing, because they know that they don't have to go out and spend money. They know that they have an asset to borrow against. They know that they have something. So that's kind of my why. So I really like where I'm at, because I've always thought that real estate is a superior investment, and some of these other investments are superior investments. But with the blockchain part of it, you can actually raise the standard of living and create generational wealth for people around the world. So that's really, when I saw that, it's like, this is really like super cool, and it's going to be a game changer.
Wow. I can't even, like, honestly, that just blows my mind to think about giving access to people that could never even, right, who never even had a chance to, let's just say, get to the US and even try at the quote unquote American dream, right? And here you are able to, just as long as they can get a Wi-Fi connection, could almost essentially, get access. I mean,
Right.
obviously,
But not only that, it's like,
that, but
if they could actually, whether you're in like Honduras or whether you're in Romania or whether you're in Kenya, if you could, actually like get your house tokenized, think about all the capital that could potentially say, oh, I'll if I can like bundle up a number of those houses, I'll, fund some of that. Or if you've just got a story there, it's like, all right, I want to borrow against my house to, start this business, and I'm in, Honduras. It's like, if they've got the asset and the asset is knowable, think about that. That's like, capital that's going to create all kinds of human capital and all kinds of human ingenuity.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's amazing. Favorite non-real estate or investment related book?
That's a tough one. I'm going to say the easy one, the Bible.
Nice.
Um, and then my absolute next one is a trilogy. I really have always loved The Lord of the Rings.
I had a feeling that was coming. I love that. Big fan of Lord of the Rings. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Man, I've never thought about this. Mind reading would solve a lot of problems,
Yes, that's a fact. Absolutely.
especially I've been married for 33 years. So
Well, there must be, you must have it a little bit then, at least, if you made it that far.
no, not at all.
Oh,
It's
that's
it's
funny.
hit or miss. Yeah,
That's
every
true.
day.
That's fair, right? Just when you think you know, it just, you're like, no, that was wrong.
You hit it on the head. Don't make assumptions.
That's right. Awesome. All right. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you and learn more?
People can go to our website, investonmain.com. That's investonmain.com. And if they're interested in learning more about blockchain real estate and how this kind of works together, we've got a special report there. So if you go to investonmain.com and get the special report, or you can go to the contact page and, you'll get in touch with me. But I would recommend, for everybody, we put a lot into the special report. A lot of the pictures in it, I'm really proud of because, I took them personally. So it came out great. And then if they're interested in learning a lot more about it, we do the Blockchain Real Estate Summit. So if they go to blockchainrealestatesummit.com, we're having it again, and it's going to be a global summit this year. So it's
Wow.
going to not only include the United States, but Europe and Asia. And so we're doing it for different time zones too, 3 solid days, Global Blockchain Real Estate Summit. So, and
Wow.
that's in September, and it's
That would be
all
incredible.
online.
That's awesome. All over what, Zoom?
Yes. Yeah.
Sweet.
So, and we're actually investigating whether we're going to do it in a metaverse or not.
Oh, wow. Holy cow.
So, and the 2 metaverses that we're talking to, you can just sign on using like your Google ID or your Apple ID and stuff. So you don't need like a crypto wallet, but you can actually have a physical body in the metaverse, and you can have, there's a, hotel ballroom and stuff like that. And you can go outside and actually
What?
have conversations with people, in the hallway by the coffee and stuff.
Wow. That holy cow, that blows my mind to even think about that. That's crazy. That would be so awesome.
Well,
Absolutely
and
incredible.
I was always one of these guys that like, I was never a guy that was interested in the NFTs. I was never interested in the metaverse, but it's like all of a sudden I saw with Liberland that, they actually, when I was participating, and we just actually had the I think it was the 8th anniversary of Liberland, but they did it in a metaverse, and it's like, wow, this is like what the cool thing with, you can actually have international meetings and stuff. And so there's a bunch of different things that you don't, they start off with gaming and stuff like that, but it gets into all kinds of like really useful and productive things, and I think this is one of them.
Absolutely. Completely agree. Well, we will link all of those in the show notes, make it super easy to find. Michael, thank you so much for your time. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me on.
Absolutely. Thank you again for tuning in. Who do you know that wants more cash flow? Share this episode with them so you can grow your cash flow together. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you're subscribed on your platform of choice so you never miss a new episode. Go to CataniCapitalGroup.com to learn more.